to share with you today. I work at a think tank, if you will, the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute. And we are experts on Utah. We spend all our time, just like you spend your time running your businesses, we spend our time reviewing data and seeking understanding about the economics of our state, the demographics of our state, public policies that affect our state, and how we fit in the national context. And so I'm going to bring you a message today. It's a message of optimism. I think it's a pragmatism message, and also maybe a message about the future a little bit. And to do that, I want to just opine for just a minute about what it means to be a Utahn. So, our name comes from the Ute language, people of the mountains. I think that's fitting. I like that. I believe that this is a place that's guided by they call it topophilia, our love of place and our unparalleled beauty. This is a place that plans, that innovates, and invents the future. I was in front of a group the other day. Some of you will know that the Zamboni came out of Utah. This is the ice machine, right? This is a state, and this is the county, of course, where modern word processing through WordPerfect was invented for the world. This is a place, snowboarding had its roots in these mountains. Pretty amazing. Of course, we could mention fry sauce. But interesting, even the jetway, the jetway that connects you from your plane to the terminal is a Salt Lake invention. So a place of invention, people who collaborate, and then when I say a message of optimism, we have built the most impressive economy in the country. And I'm going to show you evidence of that. As I do that, since I've been bragging on Utah, I put in a couple of pictures. You live in a remarkably stunning place, Utah Valley. And I was mentioning to my friends at the table here that my husband and I spend the spring and summer and early fall hiking these mountains, and just love being people of the mountains. Of course, we are the western side of the Rockies. It's not a great ski year so far. I'm still hopeful that it'll turn better. We also have the Colorado Plateau, so all of the red rock. This is Angel's Landing, those of you that have climbed Angel's Landing in Zion. And we also are home to the Great Basin. So these three places, the Rockies, the Colorado Plateau, and the Great Basin, these are wild horses. My daughter took this photograph. We're just out west of Utah Lake, headed towards, on the Pony Trail, the Pony Express Trail, headed towards Fish Springs, and we see a herd of wild horses. I mean, who gets to do that? And be right next to a metropolitan area. So my daughter used to work at Utah State Tourism. And, so we have all these visitors that come to Utah. And this person came to Utah and took this photograph and sent it in to the Office of Tourism and said, "Man, what a place." So just kind of look at that. You're seeing this mountain goat, and it's, in this precarious position. Maybe I could use this for an economic metaphor, but that's not my point today. But just the fact that this mountain goat is sitting there above, a metropolitan center. They use the term that in Utah, in northern Utah, we have a cabin in the city, which I think is pretty cool. So, filled with optimism, liking it, at the Gardner Institute, we talk about the Magnificent Seven. Now, many of you might know the Magnificent Seven as, the top tech stocks. But we call the Mag 7 the 7 attributes of the Utah economy that really create our success story. Our economic success, our high household income and low poverty, our upward mobility, our equal distribution of income or widespread prosperity, a well-trained, well-educated workforce, rapid population growth, and the youngest population in the nation, and then social cohesion. So those are kind of hard to remember all of them, but let's just go look at the data for just a minute. I could pick a lot of ways to do this. This is just one way of looking at it. And we took the top 4 states in 2024 in real GDP growth. Those are the top 4 lines. And then the lower line is the gray line, that's the US average. But you can see the top 4 states in cumulative percent change GDP growth over the last decade, and we're the top state. And not only are we the top state, but we're the top state by some margin. So that's the first point of a economic dynamism. When we adjust for regional price parity and cost of living type measure, we have the highest household incomes in the country here in Utah. Just think about that for a minute. I never thought that would be true in my career. But as we've diversified, as we've become such a growth center, a growth economy, as our tech economy has flourished, we've got higher incomes and the highest household income in the country when we adjust for cost of living. And then we pair that with the lowest poverty rate. And of course, that's really special, right? Because poverty is what you don't want in your society, and we have the lowest poverty rates in the country for the most recent Census Bureau averages. Doing a lot of work right now on upward mobility at the Gardner Institute. This is the notion that as do your children end up earning more than you do. And when we measure that as a cohort, so we look in 2018, and then look at children when they're age 35, do they make more than their parents? You want to be blue on this map. So you can kind of look at it. You can see how you don't have great upward mobility in the South. The West Coast struggles. The Heartland does really well. The Midwest. Circled Utah there. Every county is blue. And this is work that comes out of Harvard University. And the lead guy, Dr. Raj Chetty, is partnering with us now at the Gardner Institute to understand this better. Another measure that we're calling widespread prosperity, but how equal is the distribution of income? And we measure that with something called the Gini coefficient. You want to have a low Gini coefficient if you value the idea that income is distributed equally. The yellow bar is the US average, showing you the top 10 states, and Utah having the most equal distribution of income of any state in the country. That means we have a large middle class, in my judgment. This is probably the reason all those other measures pop so well. We have a terrific workforce, and I'm sure you see this in your companies. This is the percent of the population, the adult population, with a post-secondary degree, certificate, or high-value certification. We rank 3rd in the country. The only states that are doing better are Colorado and Massachusetts. And you'll note here that we say workforce quality. We're talking about being well-trained, that's for your job, and well-educated, that's for civil society. That's for an educated populace that votes and that volunteers and that achieves big things. I mentioned also that we have the fastest population growth. Now this varies year by year, but when we look at the decennial census, 2010 to 2020, these red states here are the fastest growing states between the last censuses, and Utah at 18.4%, more than double the national rate, which you can see on the bottom right, the little square there at 7.4%. And not only are we the fastest growing, but we're right next to some of the other fastest growing states. So your businesses sit at the center of the most rapidly growing region in the country. And that gives you a tailwind. It gives you more customers. It gives you, more degrees of freedom as the economy ebbs and flows. Now, I didn't put the data in here, but I'll also remind you that not only are we well-educated, well-trained, and rapidly growing, but we're also the youngest state in the country, the youngest median age, the highest percentage of our population under 18. When you're young, you're healthy, you're tech savvy, you're inexpensive. And so one of the features of the Utah economy that we call it a fundamental, a demographic cushion, is this young, rapidly growing population. And then lastly, on the Mag 7, the Magnificent 7, this is the state that has the highest levels of social cohesion of any state in the country. We call this social capital. So you know how in business you have your human capital, your workforce, you have your physical capital, your machines, your equipment, the public infrastructure that serves your roads and bridges and water supply. We also have social capital, the ability to connect, to collaborate, to have networks of trust. And we can actually measure this, and when we measure it, the state of Utah frequently, most of the measures I see, has the highest levels of social capital in the country. Okay, they make you feel good, because that's an impressive, and that's why we can say that we've built the most impressive economy in the nation. You probably feel like there's a but coming. and there isn't really, but I have to, my job isn't to just come down here and like pound our chest or cheerlead, but to actually present an economic outlook and a thinking about, so what does the coming year entail? What are we looking for? And I just want to remind you that I've been doing this work for 3 decades. I've never worked in an economy that felt this uncertain. Fragile is a word that a lot of economists are using. The United States and this state is advancing an economy compared to our peers in a very strong way, but it feels like it could change at any minute. And so let's look at some data and kind of think through that. So starting broadly at the US level, real GDP growth, the red here is actual data, the yellow is the Wells Fargo forecast. I just picked Wells because they're a big forecasting outfit. But look at the 2025, so that's where you see the negative number, the first quarter, a drop of 0.6% in real GDP. And then it pops up and grows at 3.8 and grows at 4.3. And then the forecast for fourth quarter, we think will come in right about 2.1. And then you can see this forecast going out there that Wells is doing. So these are not bad numbers. This is growing at 1.5% to 2%. They're not great numbers. I would say it's a moderating economy. But I want to kind of sort of opine with you that there's a tension in the economy. There are these sort of competing forces, and reasonable people can disagree about them, but let me just try and describe what I'm seeing. I'm seeing on the one hand this AI investment, artificial intelligence, and the boom that it's creating in the stock market, in investments, and it's propping up the economy. We had the one big beautiful bill that gave tax cuts, that made them permanent. These are things that are supporting the economy. The interest rates are lowering that's helpful. And in our state, we have some major projects on the line, as well as some strong fundamentals. So that's the green side that's like holding up the economy. But the tension that we're feeling is we're having a tighter labor market because of immigration policy. This affects construction, tourism and travel, landscaping, certainly hotel and lodging. We have an immigrant workforce that's tightened. The tariffs, they're bringing in a lot of revenue, but they're also creating a distortion in the market. We like it when people trade goods freely and don't have a distortion. A tariff is like a tax. Inflation remains above target. Consumer sentiment is low. And then increasingly I'm hearing this term geonomics. It's this notion that geopolitical things are really affecting our sentiment. We're nervous about things that are happening in the world. So geonomics, and then housing affordability ends up being a really big thing, particularly in the state. So what I'm seeing is these competing pressures on the economy, and one's creating cracks and another's holding it up. And so far we're hanging in there. So if you look at the data, this is how dramatic the tariff increases are. This is going all the way back to post-World War II, so 1945, and we get an effective tariff rate, basically under 2%, and then it pops up, and then it shoots up. Now I've got 15% here. That number's unknowable at this point. It changes as you imagine, month to month, because the president's choosing to be very creative, shall we say, with tariffs. And so, is it 13%, is it 14%? It's certainly double digits. Sometimes I see some measures that are 17%. I've picked 15 here, but without question, it's orders of magnitude above where it's been. And so that's creates something. Then I didn't know what to show you on immigration, so I picked up this data that shows the number of immigrants in millions year to date through March. There's a lag, so it's only in March of 2025 year to date, showing you that consistently across the spectrum. Lots of colors here. The blue color there is humanitarian immigrants. That was the big, in my view, mistake of the Biden administration, to let the borders get so open that you can see the bump in the immigration. You can see the light blue. The red is the unlawful entries. So there's another, problem. The yellow is the temporary visa holders. The green at the bottom are the green card holders, staying pretty stable. But you can see, so take out the ideology, take out politics, take out anything like that. Just go with me as an economist and think about labor supply. And think about when you have an abundant workforce, how that can, and especially when we have labor shortages with an aging population, that you can fill these workforce gaps and the whole economy does better. So it's a constraint to us right now to not have the labor. Not arguing that it should be at the levels it was, just saying that it does dampen economic growth. So here's another way of looking at it. This is US job growth, month to month. It's a 6-month moving average, so it's trying to take out the ebbs and flows. I'm showing you April as Liberation Day. That's when the tariffs really became real. And you can just see what's happened to US job growth since Liberation Day. This is why the Fed is lowering interest rates. They don't like what they're seeing in the job market, and it gives them the ability, even with inflation above target, to do this. So again, think of these pressures. Now this next graphic's a little hard to follow, but let me just try and explain it to you. I didn't know how to describe the AI bubble, or the AI boom, or the AI investment. But one way to do that is to take the price returns in the stock market, the earnings growth, the EBITDA growth, the CapEx and R&D growth, and show it for the different components of AI. So if you work with me on this column from the left, AI direct is going to be actual spending on AI. AI utilities in the middle is going to be data centers, and AI equipment is the things that fill the data centers, all the storage. And you can see those numbers, see how high they are. And then what I'm showing on the far right is the S&P 500 except AI. And hopefully you can just see in those numbers that AI is propping up this stock market in a big, big way. And that's awesome. It's creating a wealth effect. It's bolstering the economy. The problem comes if there's a market correction, because it's a really big part of the market right now. Another way to just kind of think about this, though, is the bond issuance of the top 10 technology companies. So this is Apple and NVIDIA and Meta and Amazon, Alphabet. And I'm just showing you 2016 all the way to 2025. So if you look on the far right, you can see how much the bond issuance is for tech companies. This is showing you how much they're borrowing and investing in AI. So this is a big, big part of what's happening in the economy right now. A couple other things to just be familiar with. CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So we know that inflation got as high as 9% in the post-pandemic years. I will tell you that that is absolutely predictable. Absolutely predictable, because you had constrained supply, and you had all this fiscal policy that was creating increased demand. And when you have too much money chasing cheap goods, inflation pops up. This was excessive stimulus put out by our federal government, both parties, by the way. That excessive stimulus, I might add, kept the US economy afloat and kept unemployment at tenable levels, and may have been a very good decision. Like, it was a small price to pay to get through the pandemic in as good a way as the United States of America did. If you could go back, you might fine-tune it and say, oh, we bet too much, but you just can't know it at the time. And we made a bet that we'd take inflation instead of high unemployment. So that's just an economist's way of thinking of it. But we get it down, that yellow line is target. That's where we want to be, averaging about 2%. We're today at 2.7. It's been sticky, can't seem to get there. Really creating controversy among the Fed, because you've got the people that want to deal with employment, and then the people that want to deal with inflation. and we still haven't gotten it. So this hangs on us in 2026. Then we've got consumer sentiment. How do people feel about the economy? The lower line there, the gray line, is the U.S. sentiment. The upper blue one is Utah sentiment. So we feel better about the economy in Utah, consumers do, than the U.S. But you will note that we're still not at levels that were pre-pandemic. So pandemic, we were about 100, and we're at 79.9 in this index right now. So people are, they're not feeling buoyant about the economy. So if we look at some job growth, let's just compare some numbers. This is, the red there is Utah's job growth, the gray is US. When you see a vertical bar, kind of faint on this image, but that's a recession. Towards the right, the big crater you see, that's COVID, that's the pandemic. We come out of it. And then you can just see the red line and the gray line are very close, that Utah and the US economy are matching. And then towards the end, you see it deviate a little bit, and in the most recent data, you see us dropping towards the US. So today, job growth in Utah, most recent numbers, 1.0%. National, 0.5. We're twice the national growth rate. So that sounds pretty good, but I'll remind you that a 1% growth rate, look at the history. We've averaged, whether you do it as an average or a median, we're around 3% is our historical norm for job growth. We're 1 versus 3. So I don't know how your businesses feel, but your businesses should feel a little bit like growth is moderated, because we are growing at 1% presently. If I look at it for all of the 50 states, and in this case, we've dropped the District of Columbia because it distorted the data. But on this graph, the darker your color, the higher your growth rate. So you can see Utah, still a darker color here. But you can see, I didn't count it before, but I would guess we're in the top 10, but we're not in the top 5 right now as a performing economy. Now, I just said we built the most impressive economy in America. I mean that in a broader sense, but like if I'm doing a snapshot right now, we're top 10. For unemployment, this is another interesting one. So the gray here is Utah. No, sorry, the red here is Utah. By the way, I do it that way because of this. The University of Utah. The red is Utah. But you see that we're always lower than the United States. Our unemployment rate's lower. But you can see, look towards the right, and look how both the US and Utah rates are all ticking up. This is what the Fed's seeing again. So we're sitting at 3.6%. That in my judgment, that is full employment. This is an economy that if you want to find a job, it's a full employment economy. Unemployment at 3.6 is almost transitionary. People just moving between jobs. So we have very low unemployment, but we also have very low job growth. All right, a couple more things, and then I'll share some kind of fun things I'm thinking about, and then open it up for questions. But we do something called the coincident index. This is done by the Philly Fed. They look at every state, and they basically ask the question: what does job growth look like? What does unemployment look like? What does manufacturing production workers look like? What do wages look like? They take a bunch of measures and put them together. So you're not just cherry picking or picking one or another. And the higher the number, the better your economy. And by the coincident index, which many economists follow, Utah continues, even at this point in time, this snapshot, November 2025, to have the strongest economy in the country. Okay, well that's kind of my quick review of the data. I don't know how that made you feel, but I feel a lot of optimism. I also feel some fragility. And there's some important things that are going to happen, I think, in 2026. One of the things that I'm most interested in, and this has not happened yet, it's proposed, it's being reviewed by this, I think it's the Surface Transportation officials, but Union Pacific has proposed a merger with Norfolk Southern Railway. And this is not getting much press in Utah, which surprises me because I think it's a massive win for the state of Utah. What it does is actually creates a transcontinental railroad. We talk about the transcontinental railroad connecting in Utah. This creates, the red is the UP line and the blue is the Norfolk Southern. look at all the ports and all the connectivity that happens. As you know, you can still connect these with them not merged, but with them merged, you just get all sorts of efficiencies. And if you look at Salt Lake City here, you know, Provo, whatever, but Salt Lake City, look at how favorably positioned Salt Lake City is in the interior west, where we go north, we go south, we go east, we go west. Just nobody can touch that in the west. And I think this is a massive physical capital win for our state if this happens. We'll know in about a year. Another thing I thought you'd find interesting, we just put to bed the governor's economic report. We had the highest level ever in the value of Utah oil production. Isn't that interesting? That in this environment, that oil production in Utah is hitting records each year. This is the Uinta Basin shipping oil, not just to the refineries and things that service the Mountain West, but also going down to Price by truck and then on rail to the port of Houston and hitting the Gulf states. And a huge win for Utah. Now I want to just take a second with Utah County. So I don't know how many, I won't ask you to raise your hands, but I know a lot of you will have a Utah County focus with your business. Utah County is epic right now in what's happening in the state of Utah. This is population growth, the share of population growth by county. This county in the last year was 36% of the state's growth. One county, 1 in every 3 people. Just to respect the Cougars, and I don't know how you guys do your thing. I learned, by the way, that UVU does this. I just learned that. UVU or something, but the blue is Utah County here. And then the red is Salt Lake County, and then the gray is St. George, Washington County, and then you kind of work from there. But you have so much developable land supply that is so close to opportunity that it makes you very much a growth center. In our official population projections, this is the growth rates that we project out through 2065. The darker the color, the higher the growth rate. We have Utah County at 1.7% average annual growth rate. That's over a long period of time. The only county that we have growing faster is your neighbor, Wasatch County, which will grow in our projections at 1.9%. But that's almost the same as Utah County growing because of your linkages. So, and then the other big county you're seeing there is Tooele County, and then in the southwest you see St. George. We can also look at this not just by growth rates, but by people. And we project that this county will add 772,000 people between now and 2065, by far the most new residents over the projection horizon. Salt Lake County should add about 370 going vertical. And so the fastest growing counties end up being Wasatch, Utah, Washington, Tooele, and the like. So what do I say? You, Central Bank, those of you that are headquartered here, you are both in the best country in the world in terms of economic performance. You're in the best state in terms of economic performance, and you're in the best county in terms of the prospects for economic future. So my conclusion is just what a magnificent place Utah is. I do think economic conditions they remain hardy, but they're fragile. 2 things can be true, and there's this tension that I've tried to show between things happening. Something is gonna win that battle. I expect 2026 to have moderated growth and it will stay subdued, but you're very well positioned here. So with that, let me open it up for questions. We've got about 15 minutes of questions, and this is the most nervy part for me because I don't know what you're going to hit me with, but let's go. And Seth's got a microphone, and Seth, I'll let your team speak up. I mean, I'll kind of guide you, but over here and then we'll move around.
Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for providing this information. It's fascinating. My name is Matt with the Savory Fund. I appreciate your chance to think about all the headwinds and tailwinds, and that the economic tension and pillar that you laid out was fascinating with all the different dynamics.
That makes it so it's hard to predict, right?
Exactly. That's what I'd like to get to is in terms of sector dynamics. Where are you seeing the biggest tailwinds for which sectors are seeing the most tailwinds and which sectors are seeing the biggest headwinds, and maybe like a weighting of those tensions, which are the strongest of those.
And when you say sectors, you're meaning like industries, like tourism or or tech. Right now, you know, where we're seeing a tech industry that's very volatile. Layoffs and then investment, layoffs and then investment. So the tech sector has a great promise, but also has some volatility. I also would suggest that the manufacturing sector, because of tariffs, has some, you know, some unpredictability. Part of it we might say, well, aren't we going to benefit because these tariffs make it more likely to produce in the United States? But the supply chains are super complicated. And it's not a done deal that if you stop manufacturing in China that you're going to do it in the US, you just might move it somewhere else. So I think manufacturing ends up being interesting. Tourism is a really interesting case right now. Some of you will know that our tourism sector has been hard hit by these immigration policies. It puts fear in people to come to our country. A lot of Canadians are mad at us, don't want to be here. And so the tourism sector, I think, is suffering a bit, and it doesn't help have a bad snow year. So those are some of the positive ones. I mean, boy, this state continues to do really well in construction. Our housing shortage, the growth. Do you know that we have had 34 of 36 years of net immigration in Utah? More people coming than leaving. So I think the construction sector remains a promising sector. It's had really strong growth rates. Okay, who else? Let's go here, it looks like.
In May, Trump has the opportunity to push out too late Jerome Powell. So, given the supply side pressures it's putting on the market, where do you see the Fed funds rate going, and consequently the mortgage rates for all the construction-based people? That's pretty important.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You know, it's a hazardous thing to try and you know, predict that. Most of the forecasts that I'm seeing are that we'll get 2 rate decreases in 2026, not 4, you know, but 2. Each of them 25 basis points. I don't think that the Jerome Powell issue will have as much effect as we might think, because the way it works is he won't be chair, but he can still stay on the board, and so you don't change that vote. But I think it'll get more divisive, certainly. I mean, and I don't mean in the public, I mean within the Fed. And I think in the end that rising unemployment will win. And what that means is that the inflation is fairly subdued at 2.7. And barring inflation that gets above 3, I think we'll still get 2 rate cuts. Now, the relationship between interest rates and mortgage rates, go figure. I think it's been really difficult to predict that. My best guess is that mortgage rates get slightly better, but not much. So, okay, let's go back here and then we'll come back over here. Who's got a mic here?
We see with Japan, interest rates have really been jumping due to their deficits and debt.
Yeah.
And it is now spilling over into other countries. We're seeing interest rates start to rise with the 10-year and the 30-year and so forth. What is the end game with our deficits and debt?
Yeah, oh boy. You know, I think of, I always liken the deficit and our borrowing to termites in the house. They're just eating away at our success. And they say it's not like a bear at the door, you know, that scares you, but it's more like termites in the house. And we're walking on thin ice, no question about it. We can go another few years, but every year we wait makes it harder to fix. And I think it's super problematic what we're doing. I used to not mind pushing up deficits when the economy was suffering, you know, a fiscal policy move. But we've had this, let's go pre-COVID, we had the longest sustained expansion in our nation's history, and we borrowed through it all. What were we thinking? And I think there's some really simple things we can do. I think we should change the retirement age for Social Security. Not for anyone in this room, by the way, but for the younger side. Because you can adjust for that in your planning and your thinking, and so I think it's super problematic, and it toys with our long-term rates, and we're out of balance, and a day of reckoning will come. And in my personal advocacy and when I interact with elected leaders, I'm all about sacrificing now to have a better future. Okay, let's go here. Are you going to give me an easy one?
I think so.
Okay.
Loud, but
in the past, we've talked about how many households or permits were underbuilt along the Wasatch Front. We haven't seen that data for a few years. I don't know if that's an administration change but do you have those numbers that were underbuilt a certain amount?
Yeah.
And then the other question was, you talked about we were leading, I want to say like the socialization index or something, and that we measure it. How do we measure that?
Okay, great question. Okay, I'm gonna pull up an interesting one here. My colleague, Natalie Gochnour, here. Natalie, raise your hand. You didn't want me to do that, but I'm gonna ask you, Natalie, will you text Dayon and get his answer to the housing shortage? I bet you he'll reply. So we do at the Gardner Institute, we have the housing construction real estate expertise, and we are typically the source of that number. We would call it the housing shortage. How short are we for a healthy housing market?
and we used to talk about it a lot. But we
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
recently.
It's hard because you have to estimate household formation, and then you have to, reconcile that with building permits and what's the lag in building permits and that kind of thing. I'm going to say 25,000 short still, but I'm going to bet that Natalie gets me a number here in a couple minutes. So let's just see. But we used to be saying around 35, and we've been eating into that. And I think we're down to the 20, 25,000, but still an absolute housing shortage. And the data is just stunning when you look at housing affordability in the state. I think it's since 2019, we have the fastest housing appreciation of any market in the country. Right now, our single-family residence median sales price is 10th highest in the country. In Utah, we used to be the coast, Okay, on the social cohesion, social capital, you asked how we measure that. It's interesting. They ask questions. So we ask people, do you return your census form? Do you vote? Do you volunteer? Do you read to your children at night? What percent of your households are married couple families? And it's an interesting, there's about 30 questions that go into it, and you're just looking at measures of connection and collaboration. Okay, let's go here. And Natalie, if you get it, will you go like this to me? Okay, she got it, okay.
Pardon me, but my voice is not so good. I look around here and I see a lot of people, but I have kids, grandkids, how are they gonna afford to buy a house? Because I've seen people have to move out of the state because they can't afford to buy a house. They have really good jobs, but they just can't afford the house payments.
Yeah, well, this is the big one. The issue, when our houses get more expensive, all of us that own our homes are just getting wealthier. And that's about 70% of Utah. We have a home ownership rate household about 70%. But it's declining. And the rapid housing appreciation is very hurtful to the younger generation. Because instead of getting into home ownership early, they'll get in late, and they'll lose many, many years of wealth accumulation. So it's a huge wealth problem for our younger set. When you ask how they're gonna get into a home, they're not, unless they get help. And they're gonna get help from their parents, if their parents can do that, and you're gonna have more haves and have-nots, and it divides society in ways that are very unfortunate.
They said the average age for a person getting into a home is about 40 years old now.
Yeah, it just keeps rising. And so and interestingly, our state government is trying so much to help here, but in the end, we need local government to approve more housing that is affordable. So we need more market-based housing, and the state is putting a ton of pressure on local governments to permit better, but the public often doesn't want that, like in their neighborhoods, and it just becomes a real difficult thing. I praise all of you that are in the building industry. We so need you. And we need supply, and we need these houses built, because that's, supply is the way to solve this problem. Okay, anyway, left yet, Natalie? Okay. Sir?
So on Tuesday, Deon said we were 37,000 houses short.
Okay, so he's higher than I am.
But he was also like doom and gloom, everybody's gonna die. I mean, it was interesting to compare the two of you to how different you were this week.
Well, and you're saying he was more negative about the future.
Oh, yes, like his opening line was, all you developers are way too optimistic, things are bad. Was how he started his presentation.
Listen to Deon. So let me respond to that by just saying, so in this state, there's a Utah Economic Council, and they put out a consensus forecast, and you can go get that consensus forecast, but none of us are beholden to it. Like, we can have our own forecast, right? And I'm just so positive about this state, but Deon knows the housing, construction, real estate industry better than I do, so do listen to him. Okay.
So last year, you had mentioned Emory County as being one that you were very bullish on the prospects of things there. Is there another, are you still that way, or is there another county in the state that you
I'll
would?
tell you the county I'm really interested in is Iron, it's Cedar City. Iron County it wasn't this year, but last year they led population growth. I think they were second highest in the most current year. They have this rail connectivity that's super interesting. If you don't know this, the rail lines go to Cedar City and then they peel off. There's no rail connectivity in Washington County. That's super interesting. St. George doesn't have a rail network like Cedar does. So for inland port and for these regional inland ports and for the energy economy, a big part of Utah's energy growth right now is happening in Millard County, which is of course just north of Iron County. That's where the geothermal is, that's where solar is, that's where, basically where the new natural gas plant for IPP is. So I'm really thinking that Iron County has a promising future. Okay, let's do one more question. Go here.
Thank you. And I also want to say, I'm so grateful the central bank puts this on, and you do a fantastic job of presenting. We
Challenge to
appreciate
come
that.
to your time.
So my question is twofold. One of them is that AI and energy have a synergy together, obviously. How well is Utah positioned to be participating in both AI and energy that will run the data warehouses and things like that? And the second one is maybe more out there, but it's, if CBDC goes through, which central bank digital currency, how will that affect us?
Can you answer that one? Listen, on the AI energy kind of question, this is a topic that I think needs a lot more thinking and understanding. Our state has been a net exporter of energy for as long as I've been in my career, until about 2 years ago. And now we're just producing enough for us. This is a combination of all the demands on the electrification of, electric vehicles and the retirement of, let's call it fossil fuels sort of supplies. And, we need more energy in this state. The governor has Operation Gigawatt, is his big initiative. This state is leaning towards nuclear. That will take time. We have an all of the above strategy. I think that's the correct strategy, to get as much energy as we can. But there's a race for this energy. And, but here's why I'm optimistic, and maybe I can end with this. There's very few states that can claim they're energy states. It's like 12 states, and we are one of them. And we have oil, and we have natural gas, and we have coal, and we have geothermal, and we have solar, and we have wind, not so much, but we do have wind, and we're going to be in nuclear. So this is a state that's going to be an energy state even more so. And when you combine that with our tech industry that is so well established, I think we're gonna do well in the AI race. But energy is something we need to invest in to do that. Okay, you guys have been great. Thanks for your time today. I'll stick around if there's any other little questions, and thanks to Central Bank. By the way, Central Bank makes a donation to a scholarship fund because of my visit here, and I'm really appreciative of that. So thank you so much, everyone.
Once again, we'd like to thank Natalie, and let's give her one more round of applause. We really appreciate her willingness to come and speak to us each year. And once again, we appreciate you and all that you do. We'd encourage you to donate to the Kem C. Gardner Institute and continue their great work. You can see how that work impacts us and helps the bank and helps you and your businesses. One last item, just a note. Those that park in the parking terrace here at the hotel, they'll be there to just raise the gates, or the gates will just go up for you. There won't be any charge for the parking here today. So once again, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and let us know what we can do to be able to help and serve you. Thanks.